Your railroad sucks, and mine is better. The age-old debate among rail fans that is as old as time. What causes us to pick our favorite railroads, and what's the appeal in modeling them? Who had the best engines, and why are we so passionate about collecting them? All this and so much more. So go get your ticket from the station, grab a seat, and make sure you don't miss the train. Board! Good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to episode 79 of the Miniature Models Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, John Schwartz, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Johnny. How are we tonight?
Doing fantastic, man. So glad to be back recording another episode.
Absolutely, as am I as well. Both of the mats are booked for tonight, but fear not, we have brought in a returning guest to join in our discussion. The mad scientist himself, Mr. Sid of Sid's Trainz. Sid, how are you tonight, sir?
I am doing good. I'm happy to be back on, and I'm excited to talk about the topic this evening.
Yes, indeed. We are happy to have you, sir. We always appreciate you coming on and shooting the breeze with us. You always have fantastic insights, which we appreciate, and we're just glad to have you with us.
For sure, man. For sure.
So before we get into tonight's topic, let's just do our usual roundup. What have you guys been up to this week? Mr. Johnny, please go ahead, sir.
Goodness, what I've been up to recently. I've been getting into 80s, 90s Santa Fe diesel power, thanks to Maddie C. I had my FP45 returned to me, which I used to have from Matt R. I received that engine from him. It decided to detonate on me, and then I sold it to Matty C, which he was planning to gut it, but never got around to doing it. So I asked him to send the engine back. I put Balloonami in it, and it's an engine that I am chronically addicted to running right now. I tell myself that, I should run some steam power, and then I take the train off, and I go, ooh, well, maybe it look good with these pasture cars, and then I never get further than that. So it was off my layout for maybe half a day, and then I put it back on the layout. So I've been addicted to running that thing.
Well, it's nice because you guys have one of those out there at IRM that you guys run with like everything. So it's no surprise that you're into. I mean, I've seen it too with your stuff. It's gorgeous, and it's honestly because it is a Rail King model, isn't it?
Yeah, Rail King scale.
It's good for a Rail King scale model. Like, sometimes you get weird proportions or you can kind of tell it's hard to tell that is one. It's a good looking engine.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I only like to do some small modifications to that engine. The biggest one is just the fuel tank got shrunk because it was Rail King. So I actually just placed an order with MTH today with their parts department and got some replacement fuel tanks. So yay, spending $60 on 3 fuel tanks. Woohoo!
Absolutely. Hey, come on. We know it's worth it.
Oh, for sure. Well, it's better than my, really sketchy way of attaching the current fuel tank on there, but want something a bit more robust. But yeah, that I do want to see a real FP45 at some point. We do have one at IRM, but I am cursed to never see it because it only runs on diesel days, and there's always a train hangout on diesel days. In fact, this year we're going to be on Long Island when diesel days is happening. Past years was like Palooza or other things, so hopefully I'll be able to see it maybe next year. But very cool engine, and very excited to have it going.
Absolutely. No, I've been loving your devolving into the 80s and 90s Santa Fe stuff. It's such a great aesthetic, a neat era to model.
For sure.
I love that it just happened naturally. You couldn't avoid it. It just naturally happened. I love it. And we'll get into some more of that stuff as we go on tonight. But before that, Sid, what have you been up to, sir?
Well, normally I would be, working on a bunch of trains, but I just finished school, and so I'm taking a little bit of a break for my little week off, just running my own trains. And as you guys know, I'm always rotating stuff in and out. I've been doing some trading recently, and I've really been trying to specialize and get some very specific items, mainly rolling stock wise, for some coal train stuff. And I'm having a lot of fun with that, and just kind of enjoying, running trains, and just kind of stepping back from working on trains just for a very short period of time. And I'm going to go back to working on stuff. And on the flip side, I have another hobby. I work on cars, and my brother and I have a couple classic cars, and so I've been doing that. But it's been nice just kind of not having to worry about school and having to think critically every second of the day. And instead I can just run some trains, work on cars, have fun, and now at nighttime just sit here and talk with you guys.
Yeah, no, man, I respect the grind. I know that end of semester, just that crunch time, the crunchitize me, Captain, of of having to work at the end.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. It I wouldn't say it really takes a toll on you, but it's kind of just like, you're not really thinking about much else. There's that like 24 hours leading up to an exam, especially a final, where you're just sitting there and you're just like x plus z plus 2 5 9, trying to think about problems or remember things, and you're like, what is world, people, what,
Train? What
train, uh,
train? Wheels? Are they
but it
big
is
and
nice
fast?
but it is nice it is nice to not having to do that, and instead can have some fun with trains. And of course it's summertime, so we got some cool events going on this summer where all of us will be together and we can hang out and enjoy the hobby.
Crossover event. I love it. Yeah, no, man, I feel you on the crunch time. I've had a busy few weeks at work here, and I've not had much time to do train stuff either, but I have persisted through it. And in the spare time, I've been working on. Currently, I try to. One of the big things that I always have a problem with, and I'm sure you guys can attest to this, is wanting to do too much too quickly at the same time. Like getting one engine from one railroad, and it's like, oh great, I want to build this train now. But then like, oh wait, hold on, this came up just now on for sale. I got to get this right now, and then so you kind of bounce around, and then you're like a you know master of none when it comes to buying stuff to finish trains. That's always the thing I always goof on myself for. I never finish a train.
We don't know anybody who does that, do
No,
we?
we
No,
don't.
No.
Not at
no,
all.
can't think of a single soul.
Nope. So I've been focusing diligently on getting a mail train consist. I've been trying to, not just a mail train, but getting as much of the head end cars, excuse me, as many of the head end cars as possible that I can find. There's some, God, there's some hard to find pieces. Apparently, Golden Gate Depot just, everybody that owns a 54-foot reefer just doesn't want to sell it because they like it. You want to own it.
I I just want a green REA one, but they always come up and
Yeah.
like there's no box, or they're
Nope.
two
It's
rail,
always two
or
rail.
and it's $250. I'm like, I'm not paying $250 for a two rail no box car.
And yes, we love two rail. Yeah. But you know what? We do three rail. We want three rail ones.
Exactly. I'm like,
Well, unfortunately, all the 3-row ones are being buried with their owners, apparently.
Apparently so, because none of us can have them. So I just want a blue B&O one. God, it's so hard. B&O, couple of green ones, REA, maybe a New York Central here and there. But Santa Fe. But yes, so I'm slowly but surely actually just getting some stuff from Lou here soon. And I just did a deal with Tony. We grabbed a couple of New York Central baggage cars. He's going to make one into a special project piece. I won't divulge it just yet, but anybody who follows him on Instagram, The Rambles, he's working on some stuff right now, and I'm super happy with it. I really love a good model, and again, we can get into this more in the show because it does pertain to it. But like a really good, well done model that you just have to own because of how nice it is and what it represents is such a good thing. I know both of you guys can absolutely attest to that sentiment of wanting a really good thing. So yeah, but that's pretty much all that's been going on with me. I'm just getting ready for my oh, and also, I mean, God, and I've also been one last shameful plug, been getting ready to do some collection updates and stuff on Instagram. So be sure to follow me if you haven't yet. I'll do my social media plug at the end, RetroMikado 96. Yeah, so I've gotten some interesting new pieces recently that I'm looking to show and share in the social media realm. But let's get into our main topic of the evening, which is just discussing some of our favorite railroads and why we like them and why our ideas and opinions are better than all of yours. I mean, look, okay.
It's true.
We can't help the fact that they are. Like, we didn't create this. It just is a fact. Don't blame us for the fact that our taste is just better. we always, for reference, we're not actually saying this, even though it's true. We always goof on this when we're talking with each other about these things. The three of us are all very supportive of each other's likes because we do have this kind of mutual appreciation for all of each other's favorite railroads. Before we get into our icebreaker, can you guys think of any railroads between our little triangle here that we don't like amongst each other? I don't think there's a single one maybe Penzi between me and Johnny, but even then I'm not the biggest Penzi fan either. I have a love-hate relationship with Penzi. So
I feel like the lack of this has been we can honestly talk about it in a few minutes, but not liking something as a modeler is usually just because there's so much of that railroad and that you're jealous that there's that much.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's usually not like, because in all honesty, all railroading is very cool. Like, even if it's obscure or very run of the mills, like standing in front of a USRA engine that's steaming in front of you is just as cool as standing in front of some obscure, very road specific thing. You know, at the end of the day, all railroading is very cool, but I can't think of one myself that I'm like, oh, I don't like that. You know, I kind of like everything.
No, we are a friend of all train, but it is more of just a social thing to debate. It's human nature to compare and contrast, and I mean, it's interesting for a lot of reasons. Like I said, we'll get into that, but let's begin with our icebreaker here, and oh, I love Johnny for this. The biggest debate since the dawn of time: Penzi or New York Central? And it's New York Central, and that's the end of the icebreaker section. Now let's get into our topics.
I guess if you're looking at my wall in my basement, it's all New York Central. I
don't see a lot of Penzi on that.
But I actually have a good answer to this. It's kind of neutral.
Let's hear it.
I think New York Central did passenger very well in all regards. I think they just did it really well, with mail and passenger, whether it was a local train or a cross-country train. I think they did it really well. And their engines through all of history were very iconic. So iconic, in fact, some are still around to this day, and set some records, and the names of those trains are very, very iconic, and kind of just stuck around. But on the flip side, I think Penzi did freight really well. Like, when I think of New York Central freight, I'm like, what? Just pacemaker boxcars? Well, what are we just going up and down the East Coast? Okay, like, come on, no.
Yeah, you're picturing a little H-class Mike with a little peddler freight going along through Indiana.
And so Penzi had some big engines, and also just they did a lot. They had all those coal trains and ore trains. They had these big engines built just to pull them, the decapods and the Texas types and the duplexes and all of that. And so they did that really well. And everyone, there's the whole debate between K4 and Hudson. I'm like, the Hudson's is bigger, has more wheels, and so it was kind of more efficient than a K4. And so they were more efficient and they were faster, and all the above. And so that's kind of my neutral answer to that question. I personally have more New York Central, and I just find it a little more interesting to me because it connects to the railroads I like more than Penzi. But I understand liking Penzi because it's very in your face, big railroad.
Yeah. Well, I'll throw in my 2 cents on this one because going off of this, I do actually own some Pensy stuff in my collection. I do own an MTH Pensy 280 that's Rail King, and just it's a great engine. It's gutted, it sits, it does nothing. It's an engine without a soul, and it just sits there for
S-
whenever I want to see a dead engine be pushed around by another engine. So I have that.
As Clarkson would say, so it's just like a normal Penzi engine.
Exactly. Well, and then I do also have some HL that's Pensy as well. I have this Bachmann Prairie that has its side rods falling off and every handrail stanchion ripped out, and the smokestack has been smashed from use. And I treat all my Pensy engines very well. I think it shows as much as I care about it. No,
No better than the real railroad did.
no, but jokes aside, I'm definitely more a New York Central person, and I think a lot of that has to do with exposure as a child. In terms of we all grew up with TM stuff here on the show, and the Streamliner segments and the New York Central segments. How could you not fall in love with New York Central watching that as a kid? But for a very well done Pensy layout, one that is a lot of the accurate models of the locomotives, or something on the tier of norms where the modeling is such a high level of detail and accuracy that you have no choice but to appreciate it. And it's a double-edged sword when it comes to the Pensy. I've noticed they're very passionate about their history. There's a lot of pride that goes into it. And a lot of it's because it's so ingrained with the history of the state and the towns it ran through. But which means there's a lot of passionate folks, but also means there's a lot of overly passionate folks who who when you hear it all the time, it leads to some burnout for a non-Pensy person. But I do admire the fact that they have that dedication and admiration for the history and the personal connections that they have. If I were to have a nickel for every single time that someone said, well, this ran through my hometown, I won't mention names. I think that's I'd be able to own a Vision Line Big Boy 15 times over. But
it's funny you say that, because I have some ties to Pennsylvania, and it didn't run through my town, but I had several relatives that worked for the railroads. I even know the engines they worked on, and so there's definitely a lot of I understand the sort of pride and connection that people have to it, and it's just like you said, it's very easy in model form. It's very easy to have it, so anyone can have it, and so it's really easy for it to just be overdone. And it takes someone like Norm Charbonneau, who is modeling at a high level, or there's a gentleman in Ohio called Bob Bartzik, who has these phenomenal collections and layouts that really cement how interesting and nice and how much of a story there is to this stuff. It's not just run of the mills. There's actually some substance to it. Unlike just the surface level. It's like, oh, everyone has a Pennsylvania Flyer. It's easy to look at Pennsylvania Railroad and just be like, oh, well, that's just Pennsylvania Railroad because everyone has it.
Yeah, that's the
it's
sample
it's not
text
always
of railroading.
Yeah, New York Central and Pensy are definitely easy to just be like, oh, they're just railroads. And John, I know you're more on the New York Central side, but you've shown me more of the obscure stuff that I didn't know about, especially in earlier before Hudson's with the Pacifics and smaller engines that are not as well known. It's easy to look past all that when you have the Dreyfus in your face.
Looking to expand your collection? Check out Trainz.com. Trainz is your go-to place for new and used model railroad products. They have everything ranging from engines, rolling stock, parts, track, and scenery. If you need it, they probably have it. With new discounts being added daily, you'll be sure to find something you like. Plus, Trainz offers a newsletter which keeps you up to date on new items, discounts, and upcoming promotions. We've been using Trainz for years, and we highly recommend their stellar service. What's really cool is you can also collect points by buying Trainz and using them on future purchases. discounts. With their awesome rewards program, you can earn points on every purchase that you can use for future discounts. Dedicated modelers can also join their private car membership to get exclusive access to new listings, earn 5 points per dollar spent, and unlock great benefits like no questions asked returns. Trainz not only sells trains, but also buys them too. If you've got a large collection or are interested in downsizing and making some cash, you can head on over to sellmytrains.com. It doesn't get easier than that. You can find them using our affiliate link, www.trainz.com/MMOP, or if you want to use our one-time promo code MMOP, you can get $10 off a single purchase on the Trainz.com website. So check out Trainz.com and start expanding your collection today.
Absolutely. I appreciate you saying so. And I always, I'm always goofing on Penzi, but I'm honest. I love both. I love them both for different reasons. Both have fantastic merits. Both have, some downsides to each of them. And I was, the real reason I love New York Central was that was what I got, literally the first thing that I got. It was going to be one of the two, and New York Central just got in first. So that was what I was exposed to first. It was very, close at the same time, but it was New York Central that just stuck with me more. It's something, the aesthetic I just like more. It's a little bit more new money. Penzi was kind of always more the old money road. And that was true even, back then. That was the sort of vibe that both of them had. Penzi was the more traditional. New York Central was kind of the more chic and forward thinking in terms of business practices, clientele, which isn't a bad thing in either way. It's just differences. The thing I like about New York Central more than anything else, and I hope our listeners appreciate, even if they don't realize, the amount of effort it's causing me to not make this entire episode this topic, because I will literally go on.
I could go on.
We will. You will. I know you will too. We all ad infinitum about this because it really is a really, really good topic, but we'll keep it short. But because this is the topic and because this is such a big thing for us, the thing I like most about New York Central, Penzi was the biggest railroad in the country at one point, one of the largest in the world in terms of being an actual company. And I think they were, if it wasn't double the size of New York Central, it might have even been close to triple the size of New York Central, but I think it was at least double. And New York Central was the only one that made them sweat a little bit. Like, to put it another way, this is kind of a crude metaphor, but like McDonald's was to Penzi as New York Central was to Burger King. New York Central was the lesser of the two in terms of business, but they were the only ones that could really make the big guy look over his shoulder a little bit. And, there's tons of debates about, operating practices, Penzi 4-track. I was goof. New York Central could do with 2 tracks what Penzi needed 4 to do. That's always my crusher, my finisher, and I always goof. New York Central, you got your Penzi in my New York Central when it comes to to Penn Central. Always goof that they brought down the Central, which they did. And to be fair, New Haven was the thing that actually killed it, but Penzi was the thing that started it. It just wasn't good. And we've talked about this too a lot. It's from a business perspective, because we've all, studied business to some extent, whether in school or just as a hobby. And it's fascinating to see, what they wanted to do back then when the mergers were starting, and what could have happened and what didn't happen, and how things turned out. Because it's so it's so sad, because for anybody who doesn't know what was supposed to happen, what should have happened, Penzi and N&W would have gotten together, New York Central, B&O, and C&O would have gotten together, and then New Haven probably would have done some like Guilford Rail thing that happened up there eventually, where all the little failing New England roads conglomerated into this homunculus of just attempting to stay afloat. But
it's so
it's just instead we got these two. You could not have picked two worse roads to put together. Overlapping territory, completely different operating practices, everything. Yeah.
From looking at it as like a, there was more to it than that, but at least in my eyes, from a business standpoint, NNW and Pensy were, I don't know everything about it, but they had ties already via some bank or the company that
Stock ownership.
oversaw
Yep.
them,
Majority
stock
stock
ownership.
ownership. Correct.
And then it's like it would have made sense. It's like if Dodge and Chevy were to come, like, no, Chrysler and Chevy can combine, and Pontiac and I just said the wrong thing. Dodge and Chrysler combine, and
See, this is what Penn
Pontiac
Central
and
does.
Chevy combine. Like that's how you gotta combine things that are similar and already
Yeah.
make sense.
You put like
Both
with like.
culturally and also from a political and economics standpoint of things. Like
Absolutely.
you said, that you're combining these two different railroads, and like you said, they operated so differently, and so it makes no
Yep. There
makes
was
no sense
too
why
much.
you would do that. And of course, we saw the outcome, and it's like, well, you kind of did that to yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, they did. It was just a whole, it just, wrong place, wrong time. And look where it's ended up now. We've had, Conrail came in, and then NS and
CSX.
CSX, which are Chess, the heritage of Chessie, B&O,
Yeah.
C&O,
And
and Norfolk and Western have now
yeah.
split Penn Central up the way it should have been originally. NS
Yep.
owns most of Pennsy, and
Yep.
CSX owns most of New York Central,
But
and it
see,
works
here's
great.
here's the here's the thing. In those names, there's Chessie, and
Yep.
then there's Norfolk. I don't hear Pensy in any of
No,
them.
it's
I'm
nowhere.
just saying. I'm just saying,
As the
people.
good Lord intended.
That's right. Hasn't been since the late 70s for either of them. Um, but yeah, so that's a classic debate, and it will go on until the end of time. One thing, back to what you guys were saying on the engines real quick. The interesting thing, people always debate K4s versus Hudsons. I mean, you got to give the Pennsy guys credit. The K4 was around at least, oh man, first Hudsons were built in the late 20s, early 30s. I forget exactly when. Don't persecute me.
I believe it was the early 30s.
Yeah, early 30s, and K4s were around about 10, at least 10 years before that, and we still have two of them, and we have no Hudsons.
I was about to say, yeah, that's a win for them that I am
Absolutely, yep.
a little bit
In
bitter
terms of
about.
in terms of
That is one thing they did really. That's just funny. A lot of railroads that you wouldn't think, would stick around, or rather keep their equipment. Now we see that they did keep their equipment. That's why we have literally you have almost the entire iconic Pensy lineup
yep,
still in existence, and on the New York Central side, you have a Mohawk.
you have two Mohawks, a
Yeah,
couple of switchers, 3.9, and what else?
yeah.
Pretty
It's
much
funny. The most
that. Yeah.
iconic, like from a record-setting standpoint, is the 440. That's the only thing left. But
Literally, that was the only, I believe technically, that was the only engine initially earmarked for preservation by New York Central in terms of steam power. The Mohawks were afterthoughts and like just happenstance. Because the
now,
Smithsonian wanted, I think it was
yeah,
either 5200, which was the first Hudson, or
yeah.
5344.
44 would have made sense because there was all kinds of weird stuff with that one. It was like new roller bearings, and it was a J1E, so it was like was it the last of the J1s, or
Yes,
was it like
most
yeah?
refined J1 class. It was both the Vanderbilt and a Dreyfus in its
And
lifetime.
so it's like that is Hudson. Like that
Yep.
just defines everything that the
And
Hudson
it's the model
class was
too.
trying to be.
It's the 700E.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But yeah,
I guess it's a good point to think about that. A lot of us being Lionel guys, it's kind of hard to not appreciate the Central in some degree and be a Lionel fan because it's so
It's
ingrained with
unavoidable.
history.
Cowan indoctrinated
I
us.
guess
Absolutely.
I guess what we're saying here is if you're a Pensy person, you got to go do S gauge now because they made K4s, but Lionel made what is it called, John? The little weird
Adriatic.
like baby K4 thingy that they made in the post-war era.
Baby K4 thingy. Oh yeah, not the K4, the
But not
prairie.
K4.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the it's kind of, someone said K4 in the next room.
yeah.
A
It's the
distant memory
LaCroix
of
of
K4.
K4s.
But
Uh,
yeah, I definitely agree. I think I knew about the New York Central before I knew about like anything to do with scale modeling or anything, because I knew about the Hudson, I knew about the 700E. Um, and once I like watched like the TM video on all the Hudsons Lano made, I actually learned about the kind of path of Hudsons in real life and how they evolved over time. And there were what, 3 classes, and within each class was like
Subclasses,
3
yep.
subclasses, which is just crazy.
You see how we can
Um,
go on about this? Like, we will
mhm.
literally, it's so deep of a topic. It's fantastic.
Goes
well,
on and on and
let's
on.
take that. Actually, Sid makes a good point. So, speaking of the railroads that we're into and what we model, a lot of it I think comes from what media and exposure we've had to different trains and different models and different railroads. And like I said, I think we all have a commonality of TM being one of them. TM had a lot of influence on me in terms of what trains I was exposed to as models. And I know you and Sid also have a very deep connection with those too, when it comes to the classic TM stuff.
Absolutely.
Like I know for me, TM wise, I had a lot of I had my model trains growing up. I had my Rail King GS2 and my Alaska F40. I've said this many times on the show, but I didn't get to play with them as a kid. I've lived vicariously through VHSs of myself or watching I Love Toy Trains, and it was through that I had exposure to a lot of the every time I saw the daylight on the screen, I got very excited, or seeing the war bonnets or UP Armor Yellow, and I think a lot of that had a big hand in as a kid I liked the more colorful trains, which is a very iconic of the West Coast, and that definitely had a hand in my preference of trains. How about you guys? How did TM shape your perception of what railroads you guys liked?
So it's interesting, because of the way I was brought up on TM. It was, I mean, I still have my original, like, one of the first edition I Love Toy Trains VHSs. For me, I I was always more interested. The models were more of like an expression of my it was an outlet for me to enjoy my general enjoyment of trains. Like, I love the models for what they are, but I love what they allow me to do more, if that makes sense. That's kind of very heavy in terms of the topic, but like Sid, I feel like it's slightly different with you, because you very much more focused on like the models themselves,
Yeah,
as a kid. Whereas I was
yeah,
more like, I was more into like, oh, the model allows me to recreate this or something. And I wasn't thinking this as a kid, of course. I'm thinking
yeah,
colorful train there. Um, but yeah, it was just a fun. I enjoyed the TM stuff because, one, it taught me a lot of stuff about trains in a fun way, and it was just a way to find out, because when you're a kid, you kind of, you don't really need to like understand something to kind of download it into your brain. So like, you just kind of absorb stuff, um and you're just like, yeah, okay, so this is what is now part of me. So just seeing all the layouts and just the different methodology, it was kind of like a big appetizer of all the potential that you could see, because you would see high rail stuff, you would see vintage things, you would see real stuff, you would see all different kinds of just topics, and it was fun to kind of get that like appetizer tray of all the different things you could be into. So that's kind of what it was for me. It was just a fun program to just enjoy, and just turn your brain off and just over the trains. And years later, after seeing one in whatever the first one was, when they showed the MTH official I Love Toy Train set, it's one of my favorite things in my collection, is my mint TM MTH I Love Toy Train set. I still have it because it reminds me of what that program did for me.
Yeah, for me, like you said, it was kind of the opposite. I actually didn't watch I Love Toy Trains until I was more of an adult teenager. Um, I jumped right into the classic TM. TM is very I love Lionel and very history based, and what's happened kind of in the past. Watching it now, it's kind of sad at how kind of backwards thinking it was. Like
Little
looking at it
biased,
now,
you know.
it was very reminiscent, and it's almost depressing in a way looking at it, because they were like, oh, the hobby's dying. Oh,
Yeah.
when you stop at a corner and you see the old drugstore that used to sell trains and now they're gone, it's like, no, there is still life in the hobby as we know.
Well,
Um,
video games are ruining everything, Sid. The hobby's
yeah,
dying.
exactly. But the I was definitely based on more like focusing on the history of model trains, and so I went really really deep, and I still know a lot. I'm not saying that I know everything, but if you ask me something, I probably know. And if you ask me about some very obscure companies from the 80s and 90s, I definitely know stuff that your average person doesn't will know. Um, and so everything for me was kind of this. I want to own. I want to collect. I was and still am a collector. At the end of the day, I'm a collector. In the past 5 years, I've definitely dived more into the realism and scale and understanding the history behind trains. And I always knew about the history, but I was just like, oh, the hit, like it's kind of history on real trains is documented really well, but model stuff isn't documented as well. And so I wanted to absorb it as early as possible so I could learn more and more before, well, unfortunately, the sources go away if they don't document it. And so I'm a collector. I was buying lots of 90s stuff, and it fueled my love of stuff that's now kind of older. And to me it's nostalgic because I look back at it as a kid, looking at it, and then now I can buy it and can have it, and it's very cool. um but because I watched TM, I was very much about Lionel from the 90s and early 2000s, and they were making a lot of really nice stuff in that time. And then as a local business, MTH was around me in Maryland, and so it just kind of fueled everything. And by chance, it kind of ended up pushing me to like a lot of local roads, like the Chesapeake in Ohio, the Baltimore in Ohio, the Norfolk and Western. It's kind of another reason for that one. Um, but yeah, TM definitely shaped me into a collector and lover of the models. And as more of an adult, I've looked more into the history and what really happened for these models to even exist.
Want to support your favorite O-Scale podcast and rock some awesome merch? Well, now you can. We've teamed up with Redbubble.com and have come up with a great selection of gear that you can get right now. They have everything from shirts, hoodies, stickers, mugs, bags, you name it. Heck, you could even get a wall clock with us on it. All this great stuff and more at Redbubble.com. Links are down in the show notes, so grab yourself some gear and rock some awesome podcast merch.
I think another thing is like John. I think you and I have more of a similarity in this when it comes to the media that we consume,
Mhm.
which is we lean more towards the historical stuff a little bit more, or
Yes.
more of the media of the actual trains. Growing up, I started very much with going to the library and borrowing whatever train videos or magazines were available at the time. And I have very fond memories of going to the library, getting all the DVDs of the Steam excursions from the 90s or earlier. The 44, 49, the Challenger going as running as Clinchfield, the 844, the 261, 765, all the classic 90s excursions, the T1s, the Chessie Steam Special. And I guess for me, being a person who, for all of us growing up, not, Steam is long gone outside of excursions. That was our way to see Steam, to see it in action and see it in. At that time was the clearest format possible. Now we look at him like, wow, he can't make out half what we're looking at. But that was my way of enjoying Steam, and because of that, it's also shaped. Like I said, I have a love for the daylight, which developed my love for the Southern Pacific. And seeing that in such clear quality at the time, and being able to live an experience that I would never have been able to have otherwise, that definitely shaped my perception of what railroads I liked. I saw, UP Challenger 3985 came to my hometown when I was 1 and I couldn't see it, but knowing that it came to my hometown gave me a sense of pride. Seeing the daylight going so many miles for the Freedom Train and for BNSF and under its own, daylight paint scheme was great. Or seeing 3751, all the war bonnet stuff. That definitely had a hand in that. And, getting older and becoming friends with you, especially with you, John, had taught me to love watching all the historical footage, Charles Smiley Presents or Heron Rail and all that stuff like that. I think that definitely had a huge effect on which railroads became my favorite. How about you?
Oh, dude, you literally just said one of them right there. I would not be the person I am today without Heron Rail. Everybody obsesses over Pentrex. No, Heron was the that was the gateway drug. That was the catalyst for like all this. And now to be fair, one of my earliest memories, and probably the first train thing I ever watched, literally when I was like a newborn, was Pentrex's, and it's the reason I love Santa Fe. 80s and 70s Santa Fe specifically, was Pentrex's Cajon and Tehachapi film, which I think was like 4 hours long. And I would literally my parents told me I would literally just sit there for the entire time, just watch the super ASMR narrator with the voice, the really good I always forget his name, but that very great that really good narrator. But no, I had the two Heron films I had growing up as a kid were Reflections of the New York Central and Pennsylvania Glory, Volume 3 specifically. I can almost quote both of those films. I can quote the beginning of Reflections of the New York Central to a T, and those were what got me. As we all know from from what is it, Century of Lionel, that's when the real love started.
That's when the real love.
That was getting into the sound of it.
I was getting into the sound of it.
So no, that was where my just appreciation of the historical and just wanting to, that nostalgic feeling of wanting to recreate that. Like, even as a kid, you understand, okay, this is something I can't see anymore. This is something different than what I can go out and see. And again, as a kid, you don't really understand it, but you just kind of download all this information, and then it just kind of marinates in your head for the next 20 plus years until you turn out like this. And then you have to you kind of see the product of it's like a time capsule almost. See, it's like, that got cut with all this other stuff. Let's see what happened with that. So Heron was a gigantic. The fact that they had the narrator that they had too in those, he was an original CBS broadcast narrator named Ralph Morse. His diction, his meter with which he spoke, his just overall tone. If you've ever watched a original Heron film, you'll know exactly what he sounds like. And the way he presented things and the way that those films were put together, I hold everything else to the standard of Heron Rail in terms of what I was exposed to. But going back just to briefly sum this all up, kind of what I feel like, it's interesting to see the way we kind of approach modeling, because when you're modeling, when you buy a train, you are more appreciating the train as it is, as a model. You are enjoying the train as a model of the train.
Yep.
And Johnny and I are more trying to actually have the train represent the real train. Like the model is just the vessel for the real train in our
Yep.
mind. And so it's kind of interesting. Am I wrong on that? Like that's a pretty good.
No, it's in my case it's very true. This is something I tell people, which um they sort of have trouble understanding sometimes, is if I like, it's kind of just common sense, but it's also like, why wouldn't you try? If I want, like, for me, if I want to, experience real trains, I go to a museum. I know they're not running most of the time, but as someone who's becoming an engineer and understands what it takes for these to work to an extent, I don't know everything, but I understand what's going on. I can stand there and imagine and or I can go see a real thing actually running, and there's my, there's my intake of train.
Absolutely.
The models are just a way for me to not only see this in miniature form, but also bring in the mechanics and the electronics, and those getting the sound of it. And it just, I agree. For me, it's definitely more of a model thing, and which for me is fine. For other people, if they're, you guys like the it's representing
Exactly.
a real train. For me, I guess, even though these are detailed models, it's more of like a caricature of a real train.
Yeah, you're appreciating the model itself, and it's not a black and white thing.
There's a
we
lot.
appreciate the models themselves, and you of course have you're representing. You have a high rail layout. You are designing something that looks like the real world. But it's just interesting to see our different kind of approaches and how they stemmed from our backgrounds. It's kind of it's kind of like profiling. It's seeing how we got to that point, and not in a bad way, of course, but it's kind of it's interesting to see the timeline, how it all happened. And we can of course see that in our friends too, the way all they collect and everything. And that's what's so fun about this, is just kind of trading ideas and thoughts back and forth on all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess this brings me on to the next one, and the biggest, kind of one of the bigger points that we want to touch on tonight. We are, very defined in what rares we like. What would you guys say was what led you to that point? Why do you model the rares that you do?
I'm gonna go for that. Sid first. Go ahead, Sid. I want you to take that off.
So for me, it's two things. I live in Maryland, and just the whole DMV area is the home of, I don't want to call it America's Railroad, but the Baltimore and Ohio. It's the original American, one of the original, United States railroads. And
it is the original.
And so that's like the main, where a lot of my liking of that comes from. And then it stems out, C&O is south of me, but it's still very related. I like very large industrial like machinery, and so that's why I like big coal hauling engines and freight trains, and I also like Art Deco, and so I like all the streamliners, and of course the C&O and B&O had plenty of that with their fancy Hudsons and Pacifics, and then they have their big articulateds, and it just represented this kind of different form of railroading from your typical New York Central or Pennsy. It was different. And then I've talked about this. All our friends joke with me about this, but my liking of N&W didn't really come from anything local to me, like directly. It came from me going and seeing a layout and a collection of a local businessman named Tony Lash. He was a local businessman in Maryland. He owned Consolidated Waste Industries, which was a industrial kind of waste company for construction and things like that. And so in his warehouse, he had this enormous, like, I think it was 3,000 square feet or something, half the size of an average starter home. And he just, that was my exposure to N&W, and he had direct ties with like his grandfather and riding on real life NNW articulateds, and him telling me these stories and getting to see a visual representation of it in model form just ignited this liking and desire to own and in model Norfolk and Western, because it's impressive. It's, big articulated, big coal trains, one of the greatest and most iconic Northerns of all time, and tons of fantastic kind of local history with just stuff in Virginia and smaller trains. And John has shown me plenty of footage now, just showing me some of the smaller stuff, and it's just another interesting but different form of railroading from. I keep using Pennsy and New York Central, but they're your flagship American railroads. But then these other railroads are just kind of your workhorses. You're just getting it done, and at a slightly smaller level. But still, talk about an impressive just display of railroading. Look at Baltimore. That yard and all the facilities they had in Baltimore, it's crazy. A lot of it's still there, but looking at photos and seeing the number of tracks heading into those yards and the facilities there, it's just so impressive. And the fact that I can still go and see some of it at the museum is just even better, because I can, get a little taste of what it was like. And that's kind of what led me to liking the C&O, the B&O, the N&W, and just coal hauling railroads. I keep saying that in general. I collect a bit of everything, but those are my my true loves of modeling, or those three railroads.
Very well put, man. Very well put. John, how about you?
Absolutely. No, and I can go right off that. For our listeners, real quick, if you don't know Tony Lash, you'll know him from pretty much every MTH thing that's ever been filmed,
Yep.
or
Yep.
pretty much anything that was ever filmed in TM that involved MTH stuff was on his layout. Very
Yep.
Appalachia, lots of woods,
Very.
lots of greenery and
Was it like
tunnels and all that kind of stuff.
7,000 trees or something? It's like insane.
The trestles,
Oh yeah.
going everywhere. I can't believe I'm very quite jealous of the fact that you got to see on multiple occasions you went to this layout. Did you not?
Yep. Uh-huh.
And in the DMV area, where you and I both live,
Yep.
I never went and saw this layout. So it's definitely, the way you talk about it and the memories and the photos that you share. I can tell it was a very almost religious experience to go there.
It definitely was.
Yeah, and growing up in the same area, we do have some quite interesting what we lack in tourist railroads in this area. We absolutely make up for in very interesting railroad heritage. I mean, we pretty much live at the genesis of American railroading, where everything began.
It's funny because everyone overlooks it. I call the B&O America's Railroad because it's the first, but it just got overshadowed by everything else going on the East Coast, and now we have UP, which continues on the heritage, but that's a completely different side of railroading, which Johnny will talk about.
Absolutely, no,
but yeah.
It's and I live in kind of a right in the middle of a triangle of three different railroads. I always joke, it's funny, I love New York Central and Pennsy, but I never saw either of them. The closest thing that comes in is Pennsy, which went into DC. New York Central, I've never even been. The closest I've been is New York City. I've never gone along the technically did go through part of it on the Capital Limited, but yeah, I have no connection to it historically or in terms of location. So it's kind of funny that that's one of my favorite railroads. But the little triumvirate of mine would be Baltimore and Ohio, of course, because that's my favorite local road. Southern Railway, which is probably, I've never mapped it out, but it's probably the closest, like, in terms of where it is to me, is the Southern Main Line. And then RF&P, which was another fascinating railroad. Which RJ has been getting me big into. He's the really big fan of that road. I've always kind of liked it in the background, just because it's an interesting, thing. But I've very much more gotten into it now, knowing him and learning so much about it from him. It's great to have friends who are passionate about other railroads, because you just being a railroad fan yourself, you absorb so much great info. Like Johnny, I've learned so much about SP from you. It's just a fun thing to talk with someone who's very knowledgeable and fun to discuss these things with. Even if it's not like a road that you particularly find not uninteresting, but just one that you don't model, that you probably never will model. It's just nice getting to enjoy it vicariously through someone else, hearing their knowledge and stories and just the interesting things about it and why they appreciate it. Because then you can appreciate your own stuff so much more, because you think, oh, he appreciates that way. I do the same thing with my stuff. So yeah, no, same reasons that Sid said. I grew up, going to places like Harper's Ferry and Point of Rocks. I pretty much lived along the B&O main line. I never really realized how much I really liked it until a lot later in life, just because I was always kind of around it. I never really thought about it as much, but it's just the aesthetic and the fact that we have so much left of it. It's just impossible to dislike. It's so likable as a railroad for so many reasons. It preserved its own history, just like the Pennsy. The architecture is beautiful. The aesthetic of the coaches and the paint and the locomotives are beautiful. The logo alone, the Capitol Herald, is America. It's without being distasteful, like a bunch of bald eagles and flags and stuff, which, while fantastic, are a bit much. But it's such a refined, tasteful road. I love Southern, the kind of flamboyant, green. RF&P is very kind of reserved and business-like. It was all about money with RF&P, getting stuff, north and south. So it's very, it's just a neat area to live in. And then also, been doing, Sid, thanks to you, very much as of late, I've been investing in N&W heritage and found out that I live very close, relatively, to kind of the fourth main line, which was the N&W Shenandoah line, which went from Hagerstown down to Shenandoah and eventually Roanoke. So I've been really, since I've met you, delving into N&W history and lore, and finding tons of cool footage about that. And you and I have kind of been building each other up off of that since then. But this is why you need friends who are into other stuff, because it's just so nice to be able to learn all this stuff and appreciate other people's stuff. And still, again, with like Pennsy and New York Central, I love both of those for different reasons. And just, even though I wasn't connected to them growing up, I just like them for different reasons. Like Pennsy is very kind of like a homey railroad. Like I think more like local, kind of friendly sort of, everybody's railroad sort of thing, short little trains and stuff, and just kind of like, taking rail fan trips and being a little bit more relaxed. And Central is just like, big money, big time, hustle bustle, back and forth, lots of, movie stars and celebrities and that kind of thing, big power, lots of, shiny consists and little interesting peddler freights and stuff going around, like I said, and all that kind of thing. Technology, they were all about technology. So it's just interesting to, see all these different railroads. We can appreciate each one so much more as a result of just, all these different methods that we were brought up on. And, I don't know, it's just fun.
Enjoying this week's topic? You can join in on the conversation too on our community Discord server. We have a lot of different discussion channels, ranging from showing off your collection, discussing the latest and greatest in the industry, a buy and sell forum, and even a voice channel where you can hop on call and talk trains with us late into the night. We're a little over 300 strong, and we'll love to have you join us too. Check out the invite link to our community Discord down in the show notes. Read and acknowledge the rules, and introduce yourself and start chatting. We have a great team of moderators who make sure all are welcomed and respected. So what are you waiting for? Come on down and join us in on the fun, and let's talk some trains.
Johnny, what about you?
It's really interesting because you guys have very strong connections to the railroads you model through personal experience or through, it being local to you, the history being tied to the area that you guys are from. And you have me here who model railroads that are miles away from Chicago. Like UP, and Santa Fe did come through Chicago in their own way, shape, or form, especially the UP and the Santa Fe. SP is one of those things where you go, oh yeah, they did touch Chicago. My exposure with the SP, obviously, with my first train set, but it goes more than that. It started at a young age, growing up on early YouTube. Everybody watched one of those train simulator train series and stuff like that. And I grew up very strongly watching the Full Buccaneers, which was an MSTS series.
Oh,
And
yes.
it quite literally, for those who've never saw it, you can, thankfully someone had re-uploaded all the original episodes to YouTube again. But essentially, it's like the storyline of Tugs. Quite literally ripped a few of the episodes and character names, but it was took place in this fictional desert route, and it was a fight between the main two, SP and UP, and the Western Pacific also being included as well. The main protagonist was SP, but no one was really the evil character in the series. And seeing a lot of those railroads, seeing the Daylight, the Cab Forward, the E units, Big Boy, Challenger, the FEFs, the whole 9 yards, the California Zephyr, stuff like that. I got ingrained in my brain, and I even at a young age as a kid, I tried to replicate that, even though I had literally nothing from those railroads aside from my Rail King engine. But it was definitely had a very strong hand in what I modeled. And then obviously seeing the excursions, a lot of those engines from that series still are around, and they run excursions. And it was a combination of that really cemented my love for West Coast railroading. As I grew older, and I stepped away from trains, much like everyone else does, for a short period of time. And when I got to the point of being an adult and being able to afford trains, I came back and I collected a variety of things. Every good deal that you run into, because everyone suffers from that at some point, from good dealism, and you just buy everything. Some people never get out of that, and that's fine. But I realized, right? But I realized that I couldn't buy everything that I wanted, and I had to narrow down my focus. I tried to, because I kept buying nothing but excursion engines, and that just results in very expensive purchases that I can't always justify. And when it came down to the point of needing to narrow down my focus, a lot of it came back to those old YouTube series that I watched, Full Buccaneers being one of them. One of them is Nick Ozerek's series At the Rail Yard, where he reviewed a lot of MSTS content.
At the Rail Yard.
Do you remember the episode, John, where he reviewed the Donner Pass with the city of San Francisco, where they modeled that snowstorm and the train getting stuck?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think he's still doing that show as well, very rarely.
Yes, very, very rarely he does it. He's mostly focused on the Roundhouse podcast, which we take some influence from. But I don't know where we got that from at all. But
No.
But seeing that, seeing the struggles that the SP went through as well. The SP was known as the friendly SP. It was the dominant railroad aside from UP out in the West Coast, to the point toxically so. It had a stranglehold over the Bay Area, and a lot of railroads had to compete with that. Quite literally, WP got into a gunfight with SP back in the early days. Or they would constantly try to keep other railroads out of lucrative areas. Santa Fe and West Pacific had to go through very roundabout ways of getting into the Bay Area because SP was such a dominant force there. It was quite literally like the equivalent of the Pennsylvania Railroad out on the West Coast. And you had not only, and there's so much variety, the Modoc line, Donner Pass, the Bay Area. There's so much rich history that goes into the SP, and I love that. The cab engines, so they had to design the cab forward just to make sure that their crews didn't suffocate out in the snow sheds and the tunnels out there. Or the GSs with them being beautifully streamlined and iconic. and that was my main priority in terms of modeling, because that's the railroad I really enjoyed. And over time, learning about the history through John or through my own research has been very fun. Union Pacific is one of those ones where I hated the Union Pacific as a kid, because like, oh, they killed the SP and blah, 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 blah,
Based
you know.
opinion, Johnny. Based opinion.
But I had to kind of love the UP a little bit, because I live next to the UP West Line, former Chicago Northwestern. Surprisingly, I don't model CW, but I do have a soft spot for it. And how could you not love the Challenger, the FEF, the big boy? I mean,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's impossible not to. Again, it's just osmosis.
Foamer.
You're forced
No,
to. You have to.
Sid hates the UP. That's why he has a
Yes, he
spite
does.
wall of nothing but
That's
UP.
why he has
I don't
three
have a
big
wall
boys
of
he
just
wants.
big boys and FEF. No.
But it's hard not to at least love the UP to a certain degree. Even if you have your strong hatred, there's that little bit of, okay, that's pretty cool. You gotta at least smile a little bit when you see big boy or FEF running.
Absolutely.
And I do enjoy the UP a lot for that, and that is something I have collected, again, because of that nostalgia for some of those old series that I watched as a kid. And getting to Last of the Giants, that's another one that kind of cemented that love for UP. WP, I don't know too much about it, but kind of becoming friends with Cody Wipeout, he's kind of rekindled that love for WP again. I do want to get into it. Charles Smiley having a lot of that on his HO layout that he featured in his videos. I also want to get back into that, because he models it very well. And the one that I've kind of completed at this point, and one that I've been very very happy that I've been able to share with John, is the Santa Fe. The war bonnet is so iconic, and the Super Chief, the passenger trains, the freight trains, all of it is just so iconic for the West Coast. You got to love war bonnet to a certain extent. And Matt Rochford was a big inspiration for that. He, being the big, I remember going to his house for the first time when we first became friends, and walking into his layout, and literally being surrounded by nothing but war bonnet for as far as the eye can see. He had a war bonnet shelf that was 3 tiers. It's crazy. And I started to give Santa Fe more mind. I didn't pay attention to it as much, but you look out for things that your friends want to buy. If you know they're railroads, and you try to live vicariously for them or make them spend money. And when in the process of looking for things for Matt, and trying to lead him into bad financial decisions regarding Trainz, I fell for the Santa Fe a little bit as well. And he wanted to collect every passenger diesel ever owned by the Santa Fe in O scale, and he accomplished that dream. And I also fell into that as well. He also gifted me a hat that he had purchased in a giant lot of railroad hats, which was a SPSF hat, which was the full spelled out Santa Fe Southern Pacific, Sons of Santa Fe, that whole that kind of unintentionally ignited a spark for me. I was like, well, that'd be kind of cool to kind of model both of them, not in the Kodachrome era, because that was a disaster for both railroads when that happened. Santa Fe luckily was able to get back on their feet and merge with BNSF, and Rio Grande saved the SP from going under and kept the SP name. But I hate Kodachrome. I'm sorry, it looks terrible.
Ooh, that hurt.
I can't.
Okay,
I can't.
No, I'll give you. I hate it with the SP engines. It looks great with the Santa Fe engines.
FP45's great in Kodachrome. Everything else weird, but it's fine. I can respect it for what it was, and I do wish that merger could have worked, because there are two railroads I love dearly. But after Matt Rochford switched to HO, or more actually explored HO. He's not left O scale, but after he went to explore HO, a lot of his collection was up for grabs. And I remember grabbing a few bits and bobs. One, just so if Matt ever wanted it back, that he could always ask for it back and buy it back and stuff like that, or pieces that I have memories with. It started my Santa Fe collection. And over time, I just started purchasing or inheriting more pieces from Matt R. And eventually I built this giant Santa Fe collection. And, Lou, being a big Santa Fe guy too, egged that on. And so is Tim out here in Chicago. And through all of that, that's where my love of Santa Fe came from. It's a lot of learning the history and having exposure to it as a child, and having, seeing how excited it makes other people around you who are into those railroads and deciding to indulge in it with them. And yeah, it doesn't always have to be a local inspiration like you guys have. For me, like I said, a lot of it was just seeing it growing up on YouTube or on media as a child, and having that love for those bright, colorful trains stick with you, and going from ooh shiny train to the history behind these railroads is cool, and I like to have that in my collection. So a long-winded way answer. That's how I got into the railroads I'm in, SP, UP, and Santa Fe.
No, that's fantastic, man. I was hoping you were going to bring up the fact that exact thing that you led into that with how none of the stuff that you model is anywhere near you. But that's fine. Like that's, if anything, I think that's really interesting. It shows how passionate you are about those roads that you want to go, like, again, with like me in New York Central, or Sid with UP. Like, even though we're not like exactly near them, we love them so much and we know so much about them that we want to we want to learn more about that stuff. Like,
Heck, my logo is a GS2 for
exactly.
It's my GS2.
It is.
It's also a picture of my engine that I can't get back.
Oh man. So yeah, it's cool to see those, like, the reasons why. Like, Johnny, that's I love that you brought up the old YouTube series and stuff, because like for all of it, like, we grew up during that time of like the YouTube, everybody kind of like finding their creative voices and stuff. So seeing stuff like that, because I remember, I wasn't a religious viewer of that kind of stuff, but like I remember checking out pieces here and there, all the Trainz Thomas content that would come up and be made. Everybody doing, their own episodes and stuff. It sounds silly, but it was such a, it was just exploring new creative outlets, and again, being exposed to stuff that's kind of outside your realm of, where you live and everything. I have a unique one I wouldn't mind just talking about briefly, with like New Haven. I live nowhere near the near Haven. We're not taking that out. That stays in. I live nowhere near that road. But I remembered as a kid, in addition to watching the train films and everything, I loved, my library had a collection of you guys might even know the film set. It was like a VHS set. Hey kids, remember VHSs? Remember when the media was linear? You had to rewind it. There was no menu. There was a set of, it just said like America's railroads, and had the daylight going through some like a wooded Oregon. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yep,
It's gray and rainy on the side. Yeah, I feel like everybody knows that one. But it had like the different corporate films that the railroads would have made back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And one of them was A Great Railroad at Work, which was all about the New Haven. And, you see the opening scene of this. It's like, what the heck is this weird, streamlined, pointy Hudson with these dinner plate wheels? It was so. And then later on in life, I two of my best friends are from New London, Connecticut, and I got to go up there for a couple. I would regularly go up there over the summer, and getting to travel on the shoreline, the New Haven shoreline, which is one of the greatest pieces of rail line in anywhere in our country. It's absolutely beautiful. It's one of the most interesting historical pieces of network in our system. It's just something so interesting. I mean, I would equate it, Johnny, to like, it's probably nowhere near in comparison to the scenery and everything, but like the coastal, the surf line on the former Santa Fe down to San Diego. Like, it's that level to me of like, it's right along the coast. You get all these little neat towns and all this old infrastructure. It's just something really cool like that. And, that's kind of where I came from too, with Santa Fe, loving the West Coast thing. Again, nowhere near the Santa Fe, couldn't be further away from it. Like, to me, even though I love B&O and New York Central, like Santa Fe is like the god tier American railroad. Like that's America's railroad to me.
For sure.
It was always profitable, never really faltered much during the 70s. Iconic, the paint schemes, the diesel, the steam, everything about it just screams incredible business venture that just went. I'm doing the narrator's voice in my head beyond even its creators' wild expectations from Santa Fe Odyssey.
Yep.
The Santa Fe was the epitome of a Class 1 railroad. Just in, again, Lou has been, within the past few months of meeting Lou in person has been, profoundly influencing my Santa Fe knowledge. So it's been really great with you guys telling me everything. Sid, what about you in terms of like just going back to like, your kind of oddball roads that you don't really have a connection to, but you still love anyway? Like did you want to add anything else to your stuff?
Nah.
Short and simple.
Okay.
No.
Well,
No.
Looking for something different? Need a gift for a fellow rail fan? Well, folks, look no further. NPL Customs is your source for all railroading decor. Handcrafted, made in the USA, and veteran-owned. Their products made for rail fans, by rail fans. I personally have a set of coasters from them that I absolutely love. Find them on Etsy at NPL Customs and use code MMPodcast at checkout to save 10%. NPL Customs, quality since 2017.
I feel like I've said everything, and what you guys were saying makes I agree 100%.
Well, I'll hop on what John said earlier. The America's Railroads, those DVD sets that came in those little tin boxes for me. Oh my god, when you mentioned it, I heard the music, the intro music,
the jazz music, right?
I think mine was I noticed it changed from version because Jason, Chicago Jason, he also had that, and he brought it over. He gave us like, here, I bet you don't own this. I'm like, Jason, I own the exact same thing, just in a different tin. It changes between the different versions. The music changes, the different selection changes very so slightly. But mine was like an aggressive, like fiddle sound, like a fiddle, or like it. It was weird.
Was it the one with the really bad CG little like
yes,
Columbia steam engine?
That's
like
funny.
and then you look straight into the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's funny you mentioned that. That's where my love for N&W comes from, because there was one film in there that was the N&W. I don't remember what it was, but you tracked like a single like boxcar
The
through
coal
a couple
car.
N&W
Was it a
crates.
coal car or a boxcar? I remember that one.
Something I can't remember what the car number is. It kills me. I can't remember. It was like 5450 or something 50.
Core memory unlocked.
But it was that, and I think I said this in my original layout tour video back from 2 years ago, where I said there's a station scene from that video where it was like them staying at the depot and they were transporting this like crate of like baby chicks. And then this giant articulated N&W articulated in conjunction with this orchestra of music as it stomps its way into the station through this little cut in the building. That is what made me, and all the haunting hooter whistles, that is what gave my love for the N&W. And then becoming friends with Sid and developing Stockholm Syndrome when he blows a freaking whistle every 5 seconds on Discord.
Fan around Sid.
Yeah. But like it was through the combination of Sid blowing that N&W whistle and those core memories from that film that made me love N&W, or heck, for Santa Fe, the fast freight number 40 and blah 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 blah. Okay, John, confirm if I'm crazy or not. I swore grew up watching this. I am crazy. Yes. I swore I watched it in color, because I remember seeing everything in color. Like the freight diesels were in blue and yellow. Yeah. And then halfway through my childhood, it turned to black and white. I don't know what happened.
No, I remember there would be certain films that were shot in color originally, and depending on the release of them, would be either black and white or color. I think because Santa Fe was one of the only ones, because money, that would shoot in color
But that's
On
the
their-
confusing part. I watched it on the same DVD in color.
Mhm.
But then when I rewatch that same DVD now, it's in black and white. So I have no idea
Oh, the
what
same
happened.
one. Oh, that you you're having a Mandela effect on yourself.
I'm like, I can't find it in color, but I know the colors vividly on that one. So
maybe
I have
you're
no idea.
transposing another film's aesthetic onto that film.
I guarantee it. I'm as sure as I have like 6 daylights that it's I know the scene where the kid is counting cars from the crossing, and you see the freight train leave, and you hear the horn of the blue and yellow freight units leaving. I remember that much. I don't know what happened. I don't know. It's just I don't know what happened. It drove me
You
nuts to this
dreamed it,
day.
dude.
I dreamed it.
But no, I feel that though. I totally. No, I'm teasing though, for real. I
It
do.
was all a dream.
It's all a dream.
All in your head, the power within.
The power within.
I'm so glad you guys also watched that DVD too. That makes me
Oh
happy.
yeah. The God, the freaking the intros of those things, and then you would have other ones with aggressive jazz music where it was just like intense clarinet and oboe stuff.
Oh my god, you just unlocked another memory. The B&O birthday party one that features the Chessie Steam special.
That's the one
Oh,
I need
yeah.
to show Sid if we haven't watched that already.
We have Sid hasn't seen that yet.
I've described it to him. I don't think he's seen that. Have you seen the one, Sid?
I've seen clips. I know I have because when you said the birthday thing,
Yeah.
I've seen clips, but I've never seen the whole thing.
I think it's
The
called-
music in that video is so freaking weird.
Well, they literally wrote a song for the. I think it's called B&O's 8,000-mile birthday party or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. But yeah, that is what made me love the Chessie Steam special, because, and that's why we'll forever say flying number boards are death. That is what again, a lot of my love for East Coast Rares came from that DVD set because I watched it so many times as a kid.
Oh yeah. Well, Chessie's just amazing. Again, you can't not love Chessie. It's the progression.
I'm sorry, but we're just good. We're just that good. It's just the way it is, you know.
It is. We cannot help that. We cannot help that we're this to say as the Zoomers would say, we just can't help that we're the illest Rizzlers. Like,
Jeez, that hurt my soul a bit.
are you in a dip step, Johnny? Are you big mad?
Oh my god. Ugh. Chills.
I don't like that
very
feeling.
cash money of you.
I don't like.
You're
I
just
don't like
saying it so bluntly. It's hilarious.
I don't like that there's times where there's slang now that I have to look up. I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
like
no,
that.
I
To be
think
fair,
I-
I was never up to date with pop culture to begin with. So
No,
it's-
I would always have to have people explain stuff like that to me. Like, what does that mean?
Oh, do you remember in the movie Airplane? What was that? What was the slang that the couple was speaking or whatever?
Mrs. Beverly Cleveland.
Yeah, she was speaking
I
slang.
speak
or
jive.
whatever. Jive. That's what it
Stewart-
was. Just like habba-da-doo, boo-ba-da-boo.
well, I'm gonna just so we can kind of wrap this up. There's one thing I want, one more comparison that we talked about very briefly before the show. And I always kept this, and this is something I've noticed when I first started talking to people on Discord, that the arguments of people, when, with debates of like, oh, I like this rare because of this, and I like my rare is better because of this, and obviously the Pensy versus New York Central debate is always the classic example. Us rail fans, and we say, well, this rail is better than this one, and well, we have this better engine because of this. Well, we have this engine. It's very akin to, I say this as a non-sports person, it's like watching people debate sports teams, and well, my local team's better because of this reason. Well, we have this player, and well, we have this player. It's almost the veracity of the arguments and debates is almost on the same tier. Maybe a little bit it could be just as passionate depending on the level of foam you are, but I always found that very interesting. It's like when you try to explain that to the casual person who is not into Trainz, when people ask me, like, why do you model these rares? Why do you collect this? What's so cool about SP? Why do you hate the Pennsylvania rare with 1,000 fires? Why do you hate it so much? It's like sports. You have your heroes and your enemies based on where you live and what experiences you had, and that comparison is always something that's stuck with me since then. I love seeing I love watching, like, for example, like Bernsey adamantly defending Pennsylvania Railroads. Like, well, our K4s were, the Broadway was so good that we had to have 2 K4s in 2 separate sections pull it. How about your SP? It's like, well, our engines could haul the trains perfectly fine, and we didn't need to split the train. We just made more trains, like the Shasta Daylight or the San Joaquin, But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to have those petty little arguments like that.
It's the best. I love throwing it against Bernsey, man. I'll be like, oh, you needed 2 sections for the Broadway. Well, the Century was late if the first of the 4 sections of the Century didn't get in 20 minutes early to Chicago. The 4th section arrived at the designated arrival time.
It's not our fault that you couldn't blast tunnels through mountains.
No, he's great to bounce stuff off of. Just like you said, Johnny.
The coal argument's so fun.
Oh, and Sid and I always
coal versus hard coal.
Our superior soft coal. We don't need giant weird fireboxes. Oh, the anthracite has to have special heater. It's like what every engine is Henry.
Exactly.
I've got boiler ache. As a matter of fact, bothy boiler. All of the older listeners are like, what the hell are these people talking about?
Maybe you should talk to a tree instead.
You know
how much you like the forest. There's gonna be people that are gonna listen to this and be like, what are they saying?
What are these kids talking about? They're enjoying the hobby wrong.
Rizzler, what the hell is that?
That's a candy.
That's a candy.
I'd give those to Edith at school before we ate coal. Barb, wife bad. No, we're getting off topic again here. What were we talking about? Oh, sports teams. Okay, so as a person, I really like this analogy a lot, Johnny, because as someone who played football and still knows almost nothing about football, like I if you show me a map, like all the team helmets and stuff, I can only name about 2/3 of them. And likewise, like I'm not gonna go out and like just stand by a railroad line for 8 hours and watch a bunch of freight trains go by. Like, like we all have these aspects of stuff that we do enjoy and things that just seem weird to us, even within our own, like, community. Like, it's like, that's an interesting thing to go do. But like, it's fun to debate the different merits of these things just because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like you said, Johnny, not super big sports guy. I'm not either. Sid, you are to some extent.
I am too. But see, I'm passionate about going to the games and knowing how the team's doing, but I'm not I don't know if I'm looking at a football field, I can name you a bunch of the positions, but I can't name you every single one. I can't tell you about routes.
Oh yeah.
People are, it's the same thing with trains. I can go to the side of the railroad and watch a bunch of trains go by and be like, oh, there's a stack train. Oh, whatever. But I can't tell you what class of modern diesel's going by. I mean, like I don't look at the vents and know.
Yeah.
How dare you not know how many rebuilds that exact engine went through and which rehabilitation program it's had?
Exactly.
It's like it's just not my thing.
And vice versa. I can look at a football field and talk to you exactly about like what different kind of play that they're running or what different positions are going to do and why that was smart. But you asked me what team did what last year, and I'm like, who did what?
Exactly.
That's a team.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it's cool to see our different. We all kind of contribute to this conglomerate entity of knowledge where we just kind of feed off each other, and it's nice. I like it. But then we get the friendly debate going and everything, but it's always at the end of it we never get too heated to the point where we're calling each other vulgarities and such. We always keep it, I think we all keep it pretty civil, don't we?
We would never start a show by telling you that your favorite railroad sucks,
which it does. But I mean, again, sorry, we're just better. Good.
all the Pensy fans are going to stop listening to our show now. Well, to be fair, we do all, like I said, we do all have our love for the Pensy in one way, shape, or another. But
we're just forced to. It's impossible.
When you have when it's so big it's easy to punch at it.
That's
you know?
right. Exactly.
That's how it
More
goes.
surface area to contact.
We're just hipsters. We like hating on the things that everybody likes.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, that's our whole personality. You got to hate on the popular stuff. Come on.
Well, just so we can tie a little neat bow on this, because we are reaching about almost an hour and a half now. This is a topic that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I know that a lot of our listeners have. Everyone has a very passionate opinion about what rares that you guys like, and what did we get wrong? What did we get wrong about your favorite rare, or what rare do you think we should, more people should be interested in? Let us know in our comment sections, or if you're on the Discord, please let me know. I really want to know why people love the roads that they do, and why do you guys like Pensy so much? I still can't understand it, so let me know. I really want to know. That's not a sarcasm thing. I'm genuinely very curious.
I can't understand it either. I think I said one sentence about the Southern. I literally live right near it. I said one sentence about it the entire show. I don't
It's
understand
funny.
it.
I didn't even mention the Western Maryland ones.
No, you didn't. Oh my God. See, there's so much. Even we.
But it's in my backyard. Literally, I drive an hour up the road, and I'm in Western Maryland territory.
It's hard not to love almost everything. Like there's something to love about all of this stuff. Like you said, Johnny, you had to narrow it down eventually, because we would want to model every rare that's ever been existed. Jason,
not our dear Chicago Jason.
No.
Well, as I said in past, and in fact in my layout tour video, FOMO dreams and funding do not go hand in hand.
No, they do not. But if we ever get unlimited funds.
But
stuff.
Great show, guys. That was a lot of fun. John, want to take us home?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Sid, thank you for joining us. You're kind of our resident guest host here, so we always appreciate your insight and your just fun demeanor. Thank you for coming on with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much,
fun
dude.
to be on. It's always fun to be on.
And
always a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely. And you are a member of our amazing community. And as always, we'd like to take a moment to shout out some of the fantastic people who boosted our server and helped keep the lights on here at the Miniature Models podcast. Those server boosters are Tim's Trainz, Blue Comet Fan 833, Maddie C. Trainz, Newt 1969, Commodore Ghost Ninja, Bill B. of the OM&S, The Rambles of Tony, and SDIV_Tim, Hard Work Pays Off, Dashing Dan's Trains, Everyday's Life, and SD70 Train Fan. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate you as always. And as we always say, it's you who inspire us to keep the show going, and we make this show for all of you. And tonight was an awesome show, guys. Thank you. I see our stop is coming up next, and just superimpose whatever your favorite road is onto the station. Give it all its little accoutrement and dressings of whether it's a Keystone, a Keystone band on the station sign, or a big
burn the station.
Yep. Oh man. Or a beautiful SP Herald of the Sunset, or a very nice Western Maryland logo, whatever you like, put it on there. So if you'd like to get more of us, and come on, why would you not want to? Mr. Sid, where can folks find you, sir?
People can find me on YouTube. My YouTube channel is called Sid's Trainz. You can find me on Instagram under Sydney's Trains, and then you can also find me on the various Discord servers, including the one for the podcast under Sid's Trainz as well.
Fantastic. And Mr. Johnny, where can folks find you, sir?
You can find me on YouTube at Audamus. It's AUDAMUS. I'm currently working on my crane video to this very day. Time of recording, this is Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully, I will have completed editing that video and adding the additional segment, so you guys can enjoy that. And I've got some other projects in the works, such as going to the train bunker and maybe giving a tour of that, because that is a fun place to hang out and run trains. It's also a new layout to see getting developed. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Audamus_Trains. I tend to post there a lot more than my YouTube channel, so if you want to see some very cool photos of my layout and my latest projects, you can check me out there. Last but not least, you can find me on the Miniature Models Podcast Community Discord server, where I'm reading and responding to all of your posts and making a fool of myself in the voice chat. So come on down. It's lots of fun. John, where can people find you?
Thank you, Johnny. You can find me on Instagram at RetroMikado96. That's where I'm most active. And you can also find me on YouTube at RetroMikado. I swear to God, I will have the second part of that year in review video done before the next year comes, and I have to start work on that video, and then I have to start working on the next video, and then the next video, and the next video.
If only your standards weren't so high.
Oh, I'm my own worst enemy for sure.
We just need to hire editors, John. That way we can actually make content.
Yes, absolutely. But then I would just micromanage them the whole time and be like, no, that needs to be 5 millimeters to the left, and then that has to be the same font. This has to be the same font. This and that. And you can also find me on the Miniature Models Podcast Discord server as well. I always like to hop in there and have fun talking with you all, seeing your collections, and just hanging out with you all wonderful people. It is a great place to hang out. If you're not a fan, join, and also make sure you follow us on our podcast Instagram page. You can check out some exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else on that page. That is the Miniature Models Podcast on Instagram. Go check that page out and follow us. We really appreciate it. Guys, that was a really great show tonight, and I think that's it there. Anything else you want to add before we go?
Yeah, we want to give a shout out to our founding friends of the Miniature Models Podcast, formerly the Matt and Matt O-Scale Podcast, and where we can find them.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You can find Matt Rochford at WC Model Railroad on, I think, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. He's got that good branding going. And you can find Mr. Matt Z at Matt Train Lover with a combination of numbers I always forget. Johnny, do you remember what the numbers
Train
are?
Lover 9943.
That one that Sid just said, absolutely. You can find him on YouTube there, and then he's Matt's Hobbies on Instagram. You can find him on there. He posts pretty regularly on both of those. So yes, definitely go follow our Matt friends there. They will be back soon with us here. They're both Matt's on vacation, and Matt has been busy with work stuff, so they will be back soon. But guys, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate Sid, you, and Johnny, as always, my co-host. I appreciate you guys so much.
Anytime, man. It's always a blast doing a show with you guys.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun.
Well, thank you so much, and all you wonderful listeners out there, have a fantastic evening. Be safe, and wishing you green signals and dry rails as always.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.